Together, let us kindle a flame symbolizing our co-creation of sacred space at home and in this place made sacred by years of love. If you are with us on Zoom, please write in the chat that a chalice is lit on your street. And please say the words with me from the pew cards. We are a welcoming people of diverse beliefs who commit to nourish the spirit, broaden the mind, nurture the earth, and build community. May this flame we kindle remind us to strive today and every day to love beyond belief.
Our call to worship this morning is Our Souls Speak Spring by Evan Carville Zemer. If we lived in another climate, our souls might speak other languages. We might speak oasis or permafrost, dry season or monsoon, but our souls speak spring. Our souls speak green shoots pushing through last year's leaves. Our souls speak flower buds stretching to sun. Our souls speak mud puddle and nest building, damp earth and worm castings, tiny green leaves and frog choruses. We speak spring because spring sings in us. We gather to nurture our faith in our own growing, our own courage to push through, our own blossoming in beauty, our own small part in the spring of this world. Come, let us worship together. As some of you already know, I was not raised in Christianity, and although I celebrated Christmas and Easter in the secular ways that much of our nation does, Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny, they were not deeply spiritual days for me. In adulthood, while I do not define myself as pagan any more than I define myself as Christian, it is the holidays that are grounded in our natural world that speak most deeply to my soul. In the winter, I enjoy leading Christmas Eve worship, singing the carols that I've been singing since childhood, but my own soul is most fed by the winter solstice, by the honoring of both the gifts of darkness and the miracle of returning light. I was delighted to share that celebration with you this year in our winter solstice service. Similarly, in the spring, while I find meaning in an Easter service grounded in the story of Jesus, my soul responds more to the equinox, a different metaphor for the returning light and life of spring than the story of the resurrection, which we honor in our own Unitarian Universalist way on Easter. Some years, the equinox and Easter are close in time, and a single service honors them both. But I will admit, I prefer years like this one, where they are just far enough apart that we can celebrate them each in their own way. Some of us feel more of a connection to Easter, others more of a connection to the equinox, and hopefully we all can find something of value in both. The spring or vernal equinox is often called the first day of spring, and it is the first day of astrological spring, though meteorologists will tell you that March 1st is the first day of spring in a meteorological sense, based on annual temperature cycles and the Gregorian calendar. As those of us who know that there's a season between winter and spring, mud season, can attest, when the vernal equinox happens on or near March 20th, we are often fully in mud season. Sometimes we're even still in winter and still eagerly anticipating spring's arrival. Spring weather comes with far less predictability than any calendar date. That has been especially true this year with an extremely mild winter, although I'm finding it ironic and funny that today we were getting a little bit of snow earlier after I wrote about all the mild weather. What the spring equinox does inevitably bring with it every year is more light, a balance point when day and night are very nearly equal. The equinoxes are the dates on which we have roughly 12 hours each of light and darkness, and for those of us in the northern hemisphere, this means that every day from here until the summer solstice, the longest day of the year, we will continue to experience an increase in the amount of daylight that we get each day if it breaks through the clouds, as we have been since the turning point of the winter solstice. My body and my spirit crave that increased light and increased warmth. I feel myself coming to life in a deeper way in the spring, after a winter that always feels a little bit like spiritual hibernation for me. That hibernation has value. It's a time for introspection, for quiet reflection, for storing up energy for what's ahead. Spring, though, speaks to my soul of joy, of exuberance, of life bursting forth all over, including inside me. An article about the spring equinox from Greenchild magazine says, "On the vernal equinox, the sun is at its zenith. It appears to be highest in our sky over the Earth's equator. The Earth's axis tilts neither toward nor away from our sun, and the sun's center is directly over the equator. After the northern hemisphere's vernal equinox, the subsolar point, the point on our planet's surface that's directly underneath the sun, travels into the northern hemisphere, gradually casting us into longer and warmer days. Our vernal equinox occurs around March 20th each year. The southern hemisphere's takes place around September 22nd, which is our autumnal equinox. On both equinoxes all over the Earth, we experience roughly equal daytime and nighttime hours. The sun has been in its usual place all along, of course, but from our perspective, it seems as though the sun is finally coming back to delight and nourish us." I love the end of that quote, "to delight and nourish us." Yes, that is exactly what I experience as I mark this point in the year. I've lived most of my life in northern states, ones in which I spend a good deal of the winter inside because it's too cold for me to enjoy being outdoors for very long. By this time of year, I'm usually craving the feel of warm sun on my skin, even if it means I have to slather on the highest SPF sunscreen I can because I burn so easily. I just want to soak up that warmth, take it into every cell of my body, like a sunflower turning toward the sun to receive its energy. This year, of course, we have had more warmth than most winters. I'm sure I'm not the only one who has felt torn between celebrating the kind of weather that I enjoy being outside in, what we might typically call spring weather, and on the other hand, the knowledge that the warmer days this winter are bad news in terms of their cause and their impact as climate change creates ever more havoc for our planet and all the life on it. So speaking of the non-human life that we share our planet with, our family includes a dog, Gus, and a cat, Maya. They have no understanding of climate change, of course, and thus no mixed feelings about the warmer weather. Gus has been spending lots of time playing in our backyard and convincing us to take him on more walks. Maya understands the opening of windows and doors and the presence of fresh air to be a signal that she should start begging to go outside, even though she's an indoor cat. She wants to experience the outside with all of her senses, including touch and taste. She runs to the back door as soon as she hears it open and starts to loudly express her desire to be on the other side of the screen door, please. Once in a while, we indulge her, which involves putting her in a harness and leash, which she hates, but she's willing to tolerate them if it means she gets to go outside. There's something visceral in me that responds to spring in a particular way, not too different from Maya's response to the opening of the door. In my case, I experience what I think of as sensory flashbacks, not a memory exactly, but a faint echo of something from childhood. The days when we began opening our windows, playing outside without coats on, days when I started to wear dresses to school sometimes instead of warm pants, the days that meant we were headed toward the end of another school year. For me, for most of my life as a child and adult, my personal calendar has followed the patterns of schools and churches. The year begins in fall and ends in spring, with summer as a delicious hiatus from the routine of the rest of the year. Summer was full of relaxation and vacation, both active and passive versions of taking a break from a more structured routine the rest of the year. If summer was freedom to me, spring was anticipation. We started making plans, or maybe it was that our parents shared with us the plans they had been making all through the winter months. In other words, I experienced and still experience spring fever every year. Maybe you do too. As a kid, as much as I loved school, and I did truly love school, spring fever was that restless yearning to be done with the school year and to experience the freedom of summer. Honestly, even in graduate school, I'd feel the same way by April or May every year, if not earlier. Even in ministry, I have often taken a large block of either vacation or study leave after the Unitarian Universalist Association's late June General Assembly. Some years, this meant that I was off for the whole month of July, an adult version of that summer break that I so eagerly anticipated as a child. It's also true that by the end of the summer, I was eager to buy new school supplies and get back into the classroom, or as a minister to get back into the pulpit and in the rest of congregational life. That tells me that spring fever is not so much about the end of a year as it is about a change of pace. I love church life, just as I always loved school, and yet, after months of it, I'm ready for something different for a while. The primary message I want to share with you today is this: let spring speak in your heart in whatever way it does. Let the sun shine in your soul. When you can, move outside into the sunshine, breathe the fresh air, whether warm or brisk, and enjoy both the balance of the equinox and the longer days ahead, days that we know will be filled with more lightness than dark in a literal sense. I hope that that will also be true for us in a spiritual and emotional sense, despite the grief that comes with the all too tangible evidence that surrounds us of climate change, climate crisis. We need to attend to the earth and the damage we are doing, yes. One of the ways that we can fuel ourselves for the work that we must undertake to minimize the harm is to celebrate the natural world every chance we get. For me, this year, that means that while my intellect grieves the short, mild winter, the much lower than normal snow totals, and the ripple effect that those things will undoubtedly have, my soul can still rejoice in the budding of trees, the blossoming of flowers, the abundant birdsong, even in my very urban neighborhood, and the returning green everywhere after the brown of winter, even a winter like this one. Depriving myself of that joy in spring because of the grief of climate change will not make one iota of difference in the impact of climate change. What it could do, if I allowed it, would be to leave me without the energy to do the work that's called for now, the work of finding a way forward in a new relationship between humans and our world. That urgent work can be done better, I believe, by people whose spiritual reserves are filled up with joy and with connection to the natural world, better than by people who are depleted by anxiety and depression. That doesn't mean, of course, that we won't feel anxiety and/or depression about the climate. I'm just asking us to not allow ourselves to stay stuck in those places, which I think of as a sort of emotional winter without end. For some of us, getting unstuck from that might be as simple as going out and getting our hands literally in the earth as we begin to garden in the spring. Or perhaps it's walking along a lakeshore or in a forest, whatever our favorite spots may be. For others, we may actually need support. There are people who specialize in climate grief, therapists who specialize in that, and I encourage anyone who's feeling overwhelmed by grief of any kind to seek professional support. But all of us can benefit from making our connection to the natural world stronger. I believe that's the only way that we will be effective in our climate change work, is through connection to the earth and knowledge of that connection as sacred. And so in that framework, I invite us to look to spring and the awakening earth, see the messages there for each of us and for us collectively, and rejoice together. Amen, and blessed be.
As Reverend Diana extinguishes the sanctuary chalice, please extinguish your chalice at home and say the words with me. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.